Good morning.
Hello.
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 Em, we've been joined this morning by Hannah Gold.
We have, haven't we? Shall I just embarrass you a little bit, Hannah?
Yeah, please.
We're just gonna. So Hannah Gold apparently is dazzling. She's a dazzling debut, and she's a book to get your kids through lockdown. And of course, you can see in the background of your screen, Hannah, you're the author of The Last Bear, which was published days ago at this point.
Yeah, February the 18th. Yeah,
February 18th, and it's just been rave reviews left, right, and centre. So welcome to our Books at Lunchtime. Thank you for having your lunch break with us today.
No, thank you for having me and inviting me. It's like a real pleasure to be here, especially with a community bookshop. That's really lovely to be with you today.
Thank you. Can you please tell us a little bit about Bear?
Yeah, so actually I've got my copy here. So The Last Bear is published by HarperCollins, and it's illustrated by this magnificent award-winning illustrator called Levi Pinfold, who's just done the most beautiful cover and also some inside art, which I'll show you later on. But it's the story of an 11-year-old girl who travels to this remote Arctic island with her scientist father. And there's not supposed to be any polar bears left on the island. But then one night she sees something distinctly bear-shaped loping across the horizon. And he's a polar bear who's hungry, he's a bit lonely, and he's stranded. So then this begins this adventure where they become the best of friends, like you do with a polar bear. And then she determines that this is April, and that she determines that she's going to rescue the polar bear who we call Bear. And so it begins the biggest journey of her life. I think HarperCollins called it like a battle cry for the planet. And I love that description.
I was particularly taken with how, it is fiction, isn't it? But within the realm of that fiction, April is able to really communicate with the animals. She knows that if she can just be still and be patient, even if it takes hours or days, she'll just carry on being still, and then the animal will calm down and they'll be able to begin to communicate. And through that, and through kind of what she knew of the setting where they were, and then some of her dad's logbooks, she actually pieced together why Bear was there, how it was that he was there at all, and even when he'd arrived. There was some really nice detective work going on there.
It was, for me, the whole central part of it was the relationship which you touched upon, Tracy, which is this instinctive bond that April has with animals. And that's something which I probably feel myself. I feel like really close to animals sometimes. I prefer them sometimes to humans. And so she's got this real natural bond with animals, and this relationship and this friendship forms. And once she's gained his trust, and obviously in real life, I would never suggest befriending a polar bear. I have to get that in. They are really dangerous. But in my world, they're quite friendly. And so once she's gained his trust, then she really has to find out, well, how is he here on this island, which is a long way from where he should be, which is Svalbard, which is much closer to the North Pole. Why can't he? How did he end up here? So yeah, she pieces it together, and then finds out how he got trapped here. But more importantly, how she can then take him home.
Tell us about the research that you did.
Yeah, so I deliberately didn't research polar bears, because before in the first draft anyway, because I really didn't want the book to become sort of weighted in with polar bear facts. Even though polar bear facts are really interesting, I didn't want it to feel like it was a scientific bear. I wanted Bear to feel like he was as relatable as maybe a child's pet dog or pet cat. And so I felt that when we have that love for our pet, I'm not saying that Bear is a pet, but when we have a love for a pet, that's what I really wanted to get across in the book, so that Bear feels really vital with energy and life, even though he doesn't speak. And so for me, not to research that element was really important, so he felt really personable. The research I did do was into the melting ice caps in the Arctic region, and that's what I researched a lot. So obviously for viewers and readers that don't know, Bear Island is a real place, and that's where I set the book, and it's situated halfway between the mainland of Norway and archipelago of islands called Svalbard. And so and it was called Bear Island because of the polar bears which used to come there every winter to feed and to hunt seals, and it was specifically named Bear Island. That I reference that in the book. But these days, because the ice is melting so much in the Arctic region, it doesn't come as far as Bear Island anymore, which means that the polar bears can no longer get to the island of which, after which they're named. And that was the starting point actually for the book. When I was looking at where to set the book, having decided I was going to write about a polar bear, that's when I found Bear Island. And then when I researched Bear Island and uncovered that, it was like, oh my gosh, there's really only one story to tell here. But the research was very much into, and this was quite tricky to get, how much are the ice caps melting, which sort of source of reference am I going to refer to so it's consistent, because there's lots of debate and you still get the climate deniers. And also, how does the melting ice cap specifically affect the polar bear population?
I loved the way you described the island. Actually, I was just right there with you exploring it, and right there with April exploring it. And I think, I mean, it couldn't really have been anywhere else apart from Bear Island, could it? Just the way that, that sort of free roaming, isolated spot that's kind of relatable but kind of otherworldly. And it was. What about the visuals? Just sort of expanding on Tracy's question. Is it somewhere you can sort of visit? Is it, how do you get that sense of place so strongly? Because I'm assuming you haven't been.
No, because actually you can't really visit there. It's uninhabited, obviously, apart from the weather station. That much is true. Half of the island is actually like a marine conservation for the birds that live there. So humans can't even enter. Even for those I think are on the weather cabin, they can't go to the other half of the island. I didn't put that in the book, you can't put everything in. And it's actually, because there's nothing on it, even to get there, you have to sort of take like the cargo ship or the ship, and then you have to take what are those called, the little boats that go from the main ship to the island, and then you have to do it when the tide is right and the weather is right. So it's a really complicated place to get to, much more complicated than I made it. I did try to put that in, but it was like weighing down the story with my journey. It's like just have them arrive, it's much easier. But I used a website which I referenced at the back of the book in the resources section, which gave me lots of visuals. But I think for me, I've always been someone that's really been fascinated by place and geography and landscape and how evocative and the atmospheric it could be. So that's something I love reading about in other books. I love visiting new places. So it was just very much an instinctive choice. I would make the landscape and the sky and such a huge part of the book.
Excuse me, I loved the Tor character. He's not in it. I mean, obviously for this story, he is in it exactly the right amount. I would love to see another book about the adventures of Tor.
That's really cool. Actually, after when I got the deal with HarperCollins, and there wasn't many edits to do on the book. I was really lucky. It was a book which kind of came out really clean and quite quickly, almost as if it was just kind of, I often say I think it was coming through me. But when I met HarperCollins, going back to your Tor question, they said, we'd like to see more of this Tor character. Yeah. And so we had the scene where they're on the boat at the beginning where she's teaching him how to feed out of her hand. That was an inserted scene, thanks to HarperCollins and the editors. And they wanted me to include the phone call as well, where she calls him. They actually wanted me to put more of him in, but it was impossible because she's supposed to be really remote. You've only got the satellite phone, she hasn't got the internet. You couldn't have this running relationship, and that worked because it added to her isolation. But I quite like Tor as well. I'd like to think he's still somewhere kind of on a cargo ship with his dad in the Arctic, waiting for her to come back, one day.
I would love that. And I think there are at least 2 more books in this, aren't there? Because April's gone off to live by the seaside so they can work on plastic pollution. So you could do something with her. And Tor is still up there in Norway. So, they aren't grown up yet. There's plenty of books there. I would love to see more of Tor and
Yeah,
April.
that's a conversation I had with my editor the other day, because I love writing. I know that probably every author will come on here and say that they love the book, but I really love my book. And it's just, it was so pivotal for me at the point at which it came in my life. I was going through quite a not very nice patch in my life, and so for me, when I decided, that I've had enough of that, I was going to write this children's book, it just it gave me back my life. It gave me back so much joy, and I absolutely just fell in love with the characters. And it was so quick to write, it was so joyful to write, it was so easy, it got me my breakthrough. It's been an incredible, I know it's been a horrible year in terms of the pandemic, but for me personally, it's been incredible, and so I would love to go back to Bear Island and April and Tor at some point, and that's something we'll probably talk about with the editors for a future book.
That sounds brilliant. Now I'm slightly worried that I've given too much away, but I don't think that anyone ever thought that April would live on Bear Island for the rest of her life. So my saying that she went back to England isn't really a spoiler. But I was asked, is it sad? And I'm interested in your response to that question. Does it have a sad ending?
Yeah, you know what? I get asked that a little bit because I've got parents who maybe want to read the book or vet the book before they hand it to their animal loving and quite sensitive child. And for me, to answer this question in two parts, I know there's a lot of sensitive, anxious children out there at the moment, particularly with the pandemic. And I'm a sensitive, quite anxious adult, and I was a very sensitive child. And so in the book, April is a very sensitive child. And I really just pulled my ear thing out. And I really hope that children will be able to relate to her sensitivity. I like quieter internal heroines, I suppose, that are brave but not necessarily sort of gung-ho. So to answer your question, is it sad? I really wanted to create an inspiring book about climate change, because I think climate change is really scary and it's a really big conversation, and I wake up and I get petrified by what's happening. So I didn't want to write a book which felt heavy or scary. I wanted to write a book which inspired children to take action and inspired children to know that there was still hope, and inspired children to think that even if you haven't got a strong voice or you feel shy and anxious, you actually still can, even by one tiny action, contribute towards a better world. And now I'm going to answer the question. Yes, there's a sad part to it, but spoiler alert, Bear doesn't die. There's no animals that die in the book, and I think that's the big fear. It's a joyful, I feel it's a poignant ending, but it's also a joyful ending if you look at the bigger picture for April and Bear.
I think that's right, and it's really about how each of us has our place. And April's place was with her dad, and that place wasn't working very well from the beginning of the book. Bear had a place, but that was very lonely. And through the course of the book, their places get restored one way and another.
That's
so
right.
That is happy.
Yeah, the book wouldn't exist if April was completely happy with her life at the beginning of the book, and she wasn't, because her dad, she lost her mother at an early age, and her dad hasn't quite moved on from that, and that had created the space then for April to have this friendship with the polar bear, who becomes her best friend, and I think we all have animals who are our best friend, and I think the joy in that friendship is the thing that I would really love children to take from the book.
Now, I've been doing most of the talking. I have one more question. Is the peanut butter, I like peanut butter too. Was that part of the original plan, or was that a late addition by the editor?
No, all of that was all. I would say like 85% of what you see in that book is probably what was there in the first draft. Like I said, it really was a book which just, even though I don't plan my books religiously, but I had a rough plan of what was going to happen in the book. But yeah, things like the peanut butter and the hot chocolate in the teapot, and that all just sort of came out in that draft, and it was, yeah, it's all been kept as all as it was in that first. It felt like there was a lot of raw energy in that first draft. Like the whole final third is pretty much almost word for word how it is in the book that we read now, you know, so it's not changed a lot, just apart from certain obviously editorial elements which have enhanced the book, but things like peanut butter, no, that was always there.
I have to ask about names, Hannah. So is April is quite an evocative name, especially given the scope of the book and where it goes and the themes of it. Was that deliberate also? Because it sounds like the harbinger of spring. Is that?
No, the secret of this is, and I have to mention this, is my husband is like the biggest support of me ever, and he's not a reader, but he's just like such a kind kind of giving champion. He's never tried to stop me. He's always really encouraged my dreams, even at the time when I wasn't making any money from it and I was just someone who was getting rejections. So when it came to writing this book, he wanted some involvement, so he actually came up with the name April.
Oh
yeah, and but I called her April Wood because the wood was the obviously I wanted like a nature theme to it, so in the next book the character will have like a sort of a nature theme to his name as well. But I wanted, going back to an earlier question, I wanted her to have a fairly, sometimes you get in children's books children with like really elaborate kind of like unusual names. I wanted her to have a slightly more normal name because I wanted her to sort of feel relatable, and here's an ordinary girl, but you know, even ordinary sort of children, if you feel ordinary, everybody's extraordinary deep down, obviously. Even if you feel ordinary, you can still achieve extraordinary things.
Yeah, and that's very much a part of the whole book, is about normal people coping with extraordinary circumstances and situations, and I think that's what's so uplifting about it. It's just so lovely to be able to, you read the book and you see the praise that's been slathered on it. And actually, I don't know about you, Tracy, but certainly for me, I was first made aware of your book by Abby Elphinstone, actually, when we were talking to her just before Christmas. And I don't know if you remember, Tracy, but she held up this book and she's like, I am so excited to read this. And so it's wonderful how these the reading sort of begets reading, and I think that is a wonderful thing about this year and the experience of reading and presumably writing in this pandemic, is that I feel we're more connected with each other about what we're reading.
Yeah, I think so, and I think when there's a lot of hype around the book, it's got a flip side, because you do feel like a little bit nervous, oh my gosh, actually people are saying all these amazing things, are people going to read it and then feel like, oh well, actually it's not that good, so you've got that fear as well. And obviously Abby Elphinstone is someone who's very, very kind of big in terms of her eco stance and her sort of activism and the eco tips that she puts in the back of the book. So it's really lovely that she said those things and even kind of provided a quote for the book as well, because I think there's a handful of authors out there that obviously just care just as much as me about it. But yeah, in terms of the online, it kind of goes down to releasing a book in lockdown is not what I really wanted, but at the same time it has created this massive online space for people to sort of to read more, to get excited, to support each other more, which has been really wonderful.
How's your reading changed over lockdown? What have you been reading to keep yourself sane, aside from the massive press junket that you're going through at the minute and this cycle of promotions and chatting?
Yeah, so I haven't read a lot this year, just because obviously I have been really busy, but I have got some sort of favourite books that maybe I can share with you. Yeah,
you do.
And I've got a couple of them to hand. So one of my biggest inspirations as an author when I was starting out was Michael Morpurgo. And he was completely my author hero, and all of my author goals revolved around becoming Michael Morpurgo. And so actually,
to your cover.
Yeah, so when he gave me a quote for the book, I think he called it deeply moving, quite unforgettable, and and something else, something like Beautiful or something like that. But yeah, beautifully written, deeply moving, and quite unforgettable. So his name's on the front cover, which is amazing.
He also called it important.
Yes, important for the planet and for polar bears. Yeah, thank you. Because they haven't put the full quote on the front cover. It's just they had that on the proof cover. So he's like completely my author hero, because I think he's such a wonderful person and he writes about themes that I really relate to. So the first book I ever read of his was The Butterfly Lion, which is for younger readers. I think might just be 5 to 8, so it's a bit shorter. It's got the most wonderful friendship at the heart of it between a boy and a lion, and that's obviously something you can see in my own book, between the girl and the polar bear. I really love that one. And another book of his, which I've also got to hand, which is more recent, I think, is this one, Running Wild. And that was set, it's kind of like set in the Boxing Day tsunami, and it's a story of a boy who escapes on the back of an elephant. But as you get deeper into the book, it's also about the deforestation in that area and the effect that that's having on the orangutans, but also, you know, the planet. And so again, there's a really lovely piece at the end that he talks about, you know, the deforestation. So again, he's a big advocate for the climate as well. So that's 2 of my favourite books of his.
Can I ask you a question there, Hannah?
Yeah.
I think part of the appeal of The Last Bear for me was, you know, it's that central friendship between a child and an animal. And as you say, it's commonly used, you know, Michael Morpurgo's done it a few times. We've seen it in countless other sort of classic-y children's books too. What is it about that makes it so appealing for readers, both young as kids and me as well, and older readers? What is it, do you think?
I think, you know, if you're a pet lover or an animal lover, then it probably just goes back to that feeling of, you know, that unconditional love that we get between humans and animals, and how, you know, I think a lot of us can remember maybe our first pet, or a pet that we had when we were really young that really just meant everything to us. And I had that when I was young, you know, a cat that, you know, was just almost like my best friend, and I was heartbroken when she died. But she was like my best friend. And when you're growing up, I think there's just such an instinctive bond between children and animals, and the unconditional love between them. So capturing that in a book, children and adults can relate to it, because it brings back something either from their own childhood or a pet that they perhaps got now. Who doesn't love a cuddly animal anyway, hey? Do you want me to recommend a couple of other books?
Oh, yeah, that would be great.
This book here, I admit I haven't read, but it's by a lady called Em Dassu. It's called Boy Everywhere, and I just think it's a really important read. I've got to know her a bit on sort of author Twitter, and it's about a 13-year-old sort of refugee from Syria. He has to sort of leave his home and make a new home over here. And it's a really good book to use in schools, just to sort of highlight and maybe, put a highlight on the refugees, but also in a way which sort of makes you realise, well, they're just like us. You know, he left like a really quite an affluent home, sort of had to sort of come over here and face lots of difficulties. And it's just a really great book to sort of for compassion. I think that's sort of understanding.
I've heard really good things about it.
Yeah, I think she's kind of like, I might be wrong, but it was like a Guardian Book of the Month, and she's something to do with Amnesty now as well. She's donated some of her royalties towards the sort of refugee case. So it's it's just a really good sort of ethos behind it. And then I'm going to be horrible to you here, because you did ask me for my recommendations beforehand, and I'm going to spring one on you I didn't mention.
Surprise recommendation.
I know. And that's Katherine Rundell, Rooftoppers. Yeah. We've got the same agent, and when I read, I just think she's one of the most brilliant writers out there, and all of her books are amazing. But this was the first one of hers I read, and when I read that first page, I was blown away by her prose. I just think she's got one of the most distinctive writing voices. She's so talented. And when I sent And she was one of the reasons why I sent off to my particular agent, because she looked after Katherine Rundell. And then and when my agent offered, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I got the same agent as Katherine Rundell. That's just incredible. So yeah, any of her books. And also she's a World Book Day author, that's why I included her, because I think, what's her World Book Day book? It's called Sky Steppers or something. Yeah, so she's got a World Book Day companion book to Rooftoppers coming out for this World Book Day. So
and this video is going out, we're recording the week before, but this video is going out World Book Day or World Book Week. So we've got hundreds of copies of those and all the other World Book Day books, and we're going to be honoring the vouchers right through the summer holidays. So if children aren't able to get out quite yet, then come along later and use your voucher and get the book, because we've got the Sky Steppers, we've got all the others.
We've also got The Last Bear, so if people want to come in and get one off this book, you can also use it that way if you prefer.
Yeah, actually, that's a good opportunity to show you some of the illustrations, because we see some of the beautiful front cover.
Yes, please.
The illustrator is called Levi Pinfold, and for those people that are watching that don't know, he illustrated a really beautiful picture book called Black Dog, which won the Kate Greenaway Prize, and he also illustrated the 20th anniversary editions for Harry Potter. And so so we've got, hang on, I always try to highlight these. Where is it? When you want illustrations to hand, this is okay. So this is when April meets Bear, and then he's got a bit of plastic wrapped around his paw, so she's helping him free. But you can see like he's really skinny and he's looks really unhappy. But then you get the scale of him compared to April, so he captures that relationship really well. He's also there's lots of illustrations in here, but this is my favorite one. This is On Top of the Mountain, a beautiful double page spread. I think my editors called it one of the best double page illustrations I've ever seen in a children's book.
It is stunning. It really captures the moment.
Yeah, it's just so, there's so many lovely illustrations. There's lots of illustrations in the book. It's a real sort of, this is one of April and Dad just watching. This is when they're watching the midnight sun and the ceremony. Yeah. So yeah, lots of people. Oh, hang on a second. And one final thing. So this is a hardback. So it's a really, really slightly cut down version. If you look under the jacket, we've also got the gold bear. So yeah,
gorgeous. That's gorgeous.
HarperCollins have done a really, really gorgeous job of making this book.
Wow.
And they would that looks stunning.
They wouldn't have done that if they didn't really believe in it, would they? It really is a top-notch book. And I read a proof copy that HarperCollins gave me earlier in the year to make sure that I was aware in time for the big publication day, and it didn't have the illustrations in it, which is something that people not in the book trade don't know about. So I got things like this that said, you won't be able to see that, it's a blank page and it says art to come. I read it without any pictures, and then when I got the finished copy and looked at them, it was astonishing, and it brought it to life so much more. So this is the reason why they invest so much in these beautiful illustrations, because they do really bring it to life. So really big congratulations on such a beautiful book in every way, beautifully produced, beautiful content and beautiful message. So really, really grateful for you spending some time with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a joy to be here. And yes, and for anybody that's watching that goes up and reads the book, please get in touch. Let me know that you enjoyed it as well. It means a lot.
Great. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye.